Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In podcast. In this episode, I, your host, Sarah Collins, am honored to bring Tere Bowen Irish, an occupational therapist with over 45 years of experience, who specializes in mindfulness and yoga, particularly for kids who don't fit into traditional schooling. Now, this episode is for you if you are like me and you wonder, what exactly is this mindfulness buzzword that you keep hearing? Well, Tere helps us to unravel the true meaning of mindfulness, moving beyond the buzzword to show how it can help children and adults manage anxiety, build attention, and connect more deeply with the present moment. We also chat about practical techniques and provide resources for parents and educators alike. So whether you're looking to help your kids find calm, boost focus, or just enjoy a little more presence in your daily life, this episode is packed with inspiration and actionable tips to bring a sense of mindful connection to your home. Thanks for being here. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In podcast. Today I have Tere Bowen Irish with us, and I found Tere as I was Googling occupational therapy and mindfulness, and her name kept coming up over and over again through music that she's written, books that she's done, and then also extra continuing education for occupational therapists. And so I said, this is the person to come and talk to us as parents of what exactly is mindfulness. So we're going to dive into that. But first, Tere, can you introduce yourself of who you are and how you got to this point in your OT career?
Sure. I'm Tere Bowen Irish. I have been a practicing occupational therapist. I hate to say it, but over 45 years. I have ramped that down a bit. I now work privately with kids, and my current gig is teaching mindfulness and yoga to kids that don't make it in public school. And I do a lot of private work around mindfulness, either online or in person, because today's kids are very anxious for a lot of different reasons. So I found mindfulness based on the fact that I found yoga. And I had been introduced to yoga very early on in my life, which is another story. But I got certified as a yoga kids instructor. And I was noticing how interesting it was to see kids be allowed to use their bodies within a school setting. And they loved it. Whether it was reading comprehension, acting out a story, or whether it ended up being calming activities to move muscles through certain movements. And then when mindfulness started having a kind of surgence versus meditation, what's the difference? I started getting curious, and I didn't want to go to the typical people like Deepak Chopra and John Kabat-Zinn. I wanted to get a feeling of what that would do for typical person, whatever, wherever they are, including myself. So I read Dan Harris's 10% Happier. And I figured as a newscaster, he would be able to give me a very unbiased look. And I loved it. And the first time, I think it was the first chapter, it says something like, do you wake up in the morning with a horn blaring in your head and it doesn't stop till you go to sleep at night? And I remember turning to a friend, we were reading books on the beach, and I went, hello, this is me. And I started pursuing it. I started my own independent practice for myself, which was a struggle because I tend to run very high, lots of ideas, kinetically busy. And then I got in touch with Mindful Schools and took some of their 6-week courses at the time they were offering, and that's in California. I took them online, and then they had an opportunity back then, which was about 10 years ago, that you could study for a year to become an educator. And I did that full studying, which was a series of weekly meetings with a cohort of like-minded people and learning how to make it work for all ages. And I found it just so satisfying. And obviously, I continue to do it.
Amazing. It is just so cool to hear how occupational therapists are just able to do so many different things and find so many different ways to help people be successful in what they need and want to do. And I just love it so much. Let's back up a tad bit because I feel like mindfulness, what you said, and what even is that? Mindfulness has been a buzzword recently. And can you define it a little bit for us?
I mean, for me, John Kabat-Zinn, who I ignored initially, but then obviously I studied him, he talked about an awareness that arises in the present, and it is about paying attention on purpose. But the best part of it is being in that present moment and having that awareness without any judgment behind it. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And when I first started messing with it, I thought I practice mindfulness all the time. Like I'll get carried away looking at the birds in the bird feeder and just space out, essentially.
Yeah.
But now I look at them and I'm aware I'm looking at them. And I know that sounds silly, but it's not robotic anymore. I truly feel present more often than not. So to me, mindfulness is about that present moment, whether you're 5 years old and you're really focused on making a piñata, or whether you're 18 years old and your teacher's lecturing and you're noticing you just can't focus and, oh, what's going on with me? Just being that aware.
And that mind, the way that you mentioned, do you have a horn blaring the entire time from your time that you get up to when you go to bed, that it's just your head just buzzing and buzzing? So if there's a person who's coming to you and is saying, I can't pay attention, my head is buzzing from the time that I get up until I go to bed, what is the first thing that you ask or start with?
I'm a real hands-on person. Dr. Russell Barkley, who's the ADHD guru, in my opinion, talks about act, don't yak. That's my flag. I think it's really important to do things coactively with another person. And I took some life coaching courses years ago, and that coactivity of the human connection, of learning how to maybe do a new activity together, which in this case would be mindfulness. So I might start very, very simply by just chatting with them about what their perceptions are of it, and then talking to them about it not being a religion. It's secular. It's not going to clear your mind. It's not going to calm you down. What it does is it just keeps pulling you back. And one of the best metaphors that I've ever experienced is, imagine a boat and it's anchored, and the anchor has a rope attached to the boat. So you're in the middle of doing something, and the boat is your mind, and it might drift as the water changes. And then what you do is you pull yourself back to the present. And then if the waves get rougher, you might have to really pull yourself back. So I might start with them just simply, let's have a minute. And I would just maybe, you don't have to have a bell, but I like my bells. So I might just say, okay, I want you to listen to when this bell stops and raise your finger. So you can close or avert your eyes while I ring the bell, and I've got them within that tiny little container of being able to focus. The reason, and I really want to hold up another yellow flag, don't ever force anyone to close their eyes. Why? Because you might be eliciting some trauma that we have no idea about. And so just merely saying, gaze out the window, avert your eyes, or put your head on the desk, or whatever feels right for that person. Comfort, to me, is one of my beliefs. I don't care if a kid's lying on the floor doing this. Other mindfulness educators might feel differently, but to me, if the body's comfortable, then the brain's going to calm
Yes.
itself easier.
No,
So I
that's that
ring the
sense
bell.
of safety and connection, right?
So I might ring a singing bell, or I might ring this bell, and I would hold it near enough to them so they can hear it. And then I might try another tier of it. And then always the processing afterwards. How was that for you? Did you find your mind going somewhere? Most people will say to me, I got worried about when you were going to ring it again. So that tells you right there, their mind's busy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I start really slow. And especially with kids, I really talk about what it feels like to be quiet and how that makes them feel inside. And I also talk about breathing. So I might do some activities where the breath becomes our focus. Now, it's not a guru-like thing with a
Mhm.
huge diaphragmatic breath, but it can be. So you can pick and choose depending upon the person and what you think might work for them. But Dr. Dan Siegel does this one, and I just love it. Hand on heart, hand on belly. And so you close or avert your eyes and just begin to notice what's rising. Is your chest rising? Is your belly rising? How does it feel to have the palm of your hand against your chest? What do you feel? And sometimes it's so different than adults. They'll go, oh, I can feel the embroidery underneath my finger or from my shirt. Okay. And they want to tell you immediately. And
Yeah.
I don't discourage any of that. Why? Because part of that trust of the buy-in of another person doing it with them will then extend the activity to make it pleasurable.
Yeah.
So I don't buy into these programs where you put on a video and you tell the class to be mindful. I hate.
It actually makes me giggle because if someone tells me to be mindful, I just and that's why I had you define the term because I'm like, okay, I don't
Yeah,
know what that
they're
means.
trying to pull you in to be present essentially.
Yes.
But the I like apps like Calm, and I like
Hmm.
apps like 10% for my own personal use. And if I'm working with a teenager, I might have them experiment with those as homework to see what they like. The thing is, we have this fantasy of always like this, but mindfulness can be visualizations.
Yeah.
So I did one the other day with some middle schoolers where spring is just coming in New Hampshire, and I asked them to imagine themselves on a bike and feeling the breeze. So we're coming for a sensorial frame of reference. Feel your legs as you push and pedal. Let your feet go from the pedals and glide down that hill. And for some people, they need that to get the visuals going.
Yeah.
So I always talk to them about how visualization can be a real mindful activity, but also very comforting. I actually did an activity with a group of kids I work with last Wednesday and talked about what were your Easter memories as a kid. And there were a couple that never celebrated Easter, but they
Hmm.
celebrated Passover. So we had a discussion about those memories.
Right.
And it was really lovely because the point was, where is the kid inside of you who's always present? But do you put him in a corner? Or how exciting to think, oh, there's a yellow egg there hiding behind that tree. And yet, as adults, we walk by it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, this has brought back kind of two books that I've been thinking about too. One of them, so Charlotte Mason, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she wrote for back in the 1800s, wrote about educating children. And there are many homeschool educators now who follow the Charlotte Mason theory. So,
Interesting. I don't
and
know. Yeah.
oh,
Okay. I'll have
she's
to say,
fascinating. She's
okay.
fascinating. But she wrote, I'm trying to see if I think I have six of them up there. I want to say there's six or seven
Yeah.
of these giant volumes, and they're all, again, written in the 1800s. So the language is difficult. But one of the interesting things that she talked about, first of all, she uses the word occupation through all of it because it was in the 1800s and that's how they talked about it. She wasn't asking anybody about their jobs, right?
No,
She was
the
right up,
archive. Yeah.
yep. But another thing that really stood out to me when my kids were little. And she talked about if your child is looking at something, right? So she gave the example of, I want to say it was a butterfly on a flower or something. And they were looking at it and then they get up and walk away. And then she was like, call them right back and ask them one more question about what they see or what they hear or what they touch or whatever with that. And not only are you bringing them into the moment, but you're also increasing their attention span because you're calling them back, but you're bringing them to talk more about the senses of what they see, hear, feel. And I was like, oh, Charlotte, like
Yeah.
here you are as an OT before it was even a thing to be an OT. But it so much reminded me of what you're saying here about how frequently we're getting things done. We're moving kinetically, right? Things are happening, but are we actually in that moment? And if we bring it back, we separate out and then we come back and use these senses, how it just keeps us in that present moment.
There's a wonderful cartoon of a stick figure adult and a stick figure child holding
Mhm.
hands. The child is looking at these beautiful flowers in front of them at a park, and the adult has a bubble with all these things
Yeah,
on it.
972 things. Yep.
Checklist, computer. And to me, it just said it all without
Yeah.
words. That the presence, being present. It's like I noticed it with my granddaughter of I don't have to play with her every moment. I can spend she's 16 months
Mhm.
now. I spend a lot of time just watching what she's doing. If she looks to me to help, I might use a little sign language,
Mhm.
or I might look and say, what's going on? And just not having an agenda,
Yeah.
just enjoying that moment and letting her pursue it. And if she wants more information, obviously I would do that with
Mhm.
her. But also I think that builds attention spans
Yeah.
too, because the moment an adult comes in and starts changing it. I had one teacher, bless her, she was trying so hard. She'd say, okay, we're going to stop for our mindful moment right now. So she was due diligent and
Yeah.
was going to come in. And I saw some kids like startled.
Yeah, I did. Even when you just said that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so, again, that approach of maybe the delivery of, no, I'm hearing a lot of noise, or I'm
Mhm.
seeing a lot of fidgeting, or man, we've been working so hard. We need a break. What would work?
Mhm.
Do you want a visualization? Would you like to just take a mindful walk around the building? What would you feel better if you changed your posture and just laid on the floor? So offering almost hors d'oeuvres, a menu that they are exposed to, but you will notice as they become more aware and the tools have been offered, that certain people, neurodiverse, will
Yeah.
choose certain things. So I
Mhm.
always have kids say, yeah, tell me a story, Mrs. Bowen Irish. I want to hear a story about going to the beach. Or others will say, I really like it when you say, I'm going to shut my voice off now. And it's time for you
Okay.
to take over this quiet space. Everyone's different. And
Yeah.
we can't have a Stepford approach to mindfulness because
Mhm.
that just doesn't work.
I just love how when you're saying this, you're giving kids so many different options and they're recognizing in themselves what would be the best for them and then allowing them to use those tools. So taking the tools and then putting them into action. Beautiful.
I did one called Starfish. I plagiarized it from someone. I don't know. I learned it in general. It's out there. And
Uh-huh.
you just take your thumb or your pointer finger and you breathe in and you breathe out and so on. And then you
Yeah.
do your other hand. I had a child that I'd worked with for many years, and I'm a big proponent of the basic needs for anxiety. Are they getting proper sleep,
Yeah.
nutrition, hydration,
Hydration.
exercise, blah, blah.
Yes.
So she said to me, I don't have any problems with sleep anymore after what you taught me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
She goes, I do the starfish every night. And
Oh.
she said, sometimes I wish I had more hands. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, sometimes I do both hands 3 or 4 times and then I'm asleep. So just like you said, you can give a fish, but
Yep.
teaching them to
Yes.
fish is so much better.
Oh, that's so good. Before we keep going, I want to remind you of the purpose of Homeschool OT. The goal is to support you, the parent, so that you can then help your child be successful in what they need and want to do to occupy their time. This, occupy their time, is the true definition of occupational therapy. Homeschool OT was recently referred to as the search engine for when a child is struggling in their day-to-day life. This actually made me really happy. Now, part of this is because we all know how much time can be spent searching for answers, and some are often conflicting. So instead, we can work one-to-one together to discover the why, prioritize strategies, and implement them into your homeschool. So visit homeschoolot.com/services to see the range of options and get that personalized homeschool support that you need. Now, on with the show.
There's a lot of research out there. Mindful Schools has a lot of good research, and positivepsychology.com also does too. But what the touting is of all these wonderful things is the idea of increasing executive functioning. Been huge changes in brains that when they've had a functional MRI to see that there's actual physical changes, even though many report, I don't really think I'm doing it right. Then there's also that sense of did anyone in your schooling ever teach you how to focus? Not me. Just told me to focus, right?
Yes. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Sit up straight.
Yeah, I did get some of that 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. I had some of that when I was little.
When you think about that, it's a way of increasing focus by point of performance praise. So it's what Ms. Mason quoted. I always say that when I do an accommodation for a kid in a class, or if I'm consulting on someone, I might say, if you see that doing a task is so challenging and staying focused is so challenging, maybe just say, can you do 2 more?
Or a little chunk
change your voice, change your voice. And then that first and next. So first you do 2 more, then we can take a break, or then we can take a walk, whatever it is. Because what you're doing is inducing a tiny bit of stress to start building the focus. But I think with mindfulness, the idea of being quiet and bringing yourself back from letting your mind wander, to me, that really is what's helping with the focus, is just being aware that you're wandering. Oh, I'm wandering, come back. And I have kids get really frustrated. Oh, I can't stop my brain. That's a wonderful thing. Don't be upset with yourself. We have 6,000 thoughts a day going through our brain.
Yeah.
And so we recognize they're there, and then we just come back, and we have to think about an anchor. So the anchor could be thinking about your breath. The anchor could be the tactile input of where your hands are and what they're feeling. The anchor could be noises around you. You come back to listen to those. So when you think about that boat, that anchor's pulling it back, and you consciously pull yourself back.
Can you even imagine if these kiddos it's even in my own homeschool where someone, I can't focus, I can't stop my mind. If we responded with, that's a wonderful thing. Like, how would that change our entire outlook? Goodness, because so many times what we end up doing is saying, figure it out, or suppress it, or sorry, this is what we're doing right now. You know, how many times that we are redirecting instead of saying, okay, how can we reel this and find that anchor point in yourself? But not shaming that our kids are
not
thinking,
at all, and making it developmenally appropriate. 1 minute for a kid. And when you think about developmental appropriateness, the language you use, the scene you use, the boundaries you use, you can't talk down to kids, obviously. You want them to feel part of it. And I do. So when I was first studying more and more about ADHD, I do lectures for University of New Hampshire and ot.com, et cetera. And I do private ones too. But I got thinking about the idea of understanding what was going on in the prefrontal cortex for focus and attention. Dr. Barkley says that many kids can't visualize because their brain is all over the place. So I started thinking, okay, all kids love playing. So why couldn't I work the focus introducing play? So if I had all of you in front of me right now, I'd ask you to close or avert your eyes and go play in your mind. And then I said, I'll call you in from recess in a minute. So I started doing it with kids.
Yeah.
and is part of my drive-through menus that I've published for calming and relaxation. But the reality is, I had kids that you could see their head pop up like they
Yeah.
just couldn't think in their brain. So I might slip a National Geographic picture of a manatee and say, it's perfectly safe for you to swim with him right now. Enjoy
Huh.
being with him for a minute.
Yeah.
So I gave them a visual. And I had other kids, I'd whisper, so what do you really love to do? I love soccer. Imagine yourself getting the best goal of your life. Just imagine what that would be like. Feel yourself running. And then I'd go back and wait, call everybody in. Then the most important is the processing. So then you say, who wants to share? And you'd hear kids say, I played Candyland with my mommy, and I haven't played since the baby was born. You have a teenager go, I was hanging out with my girlfriend and we were just watching the sunset, and it was just so cool, and it was just quiet. And you could just see what floated their boat.
Yeah.
Where were the soft spots? Where were the fun spots within them? And we don't take time in education to do any of
No.
that anymore. It's
Mm-mm.
so sad.
But we thankfully, as homeschoolers, like this is one of the ways that we can bring in that connection. And so much of what you're saying, you have all of these toolboxes, which I do want you to talk about here, but where we're able to say, oh, what provide the manatee or provide like just one little question or one visualization of something that we remember doing. Think about when we were in the sandbox together, or what about the playground by the
Yeah.
library, whatever. If you can throw in some of those things, and yeah, it's not like an all day thing. Like what you're saying here is 1 minute. You were like, I'm going to call you in from recess in 1 minute. But how that really helped to bring all these kiddos down and more focused to
The other part
what
is
you're doing.
Barkley believes kids with ADHD and all of us have a limited amount of gasoline in our
Yeah.
tank, in our brain.
Hmm.
And so I always say to teachers, whether they're homeschool people or whether they're regular teachers,
Hmm.
do you expect these kids to pay 100% attention 100% of the
I
time?
know.
And they look at you and I go, think about it. If
To
you're
you,
yeah.
right?
And I said, how many of you have left this room and thought what you're having for dinner
Yep.
tonight and what you're doing this weekend? And I said, I'm lecturing and I'm thinking that.
Yep.
And so your brain only has a capacity for focus. The key, though, to help with mindfulness is to build routine and ritual so the mind has predictability,
Yeah.
so that gas doesn't flow out too easily with just the routine of getting the
Yeah, that
blue
decision
folder.
fatigue,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
And we talk a lot about predictability leads to flexibility. If you've got these anchor points during your day of we're doing this around our breakfast time, and then we all come together to eat lunch or whatever,
Yeah.
and you know what's going to come first, second, third after that, then okay, so we always do math after that, but math could be something different today. It doesn't matter because it's within that flexibility is within that predictability point.
And think about yourself. Like
Mhm.
you and I are complete strangers. And if I said
Right.
to you at one point, you know what, I don't want to do a half an hour. This is intriguing to me. So I'm just going to keep talking. And you would panic because you didn't know I was going to do that. And
Right.
so when we don't have the boundaries, like I emailed you how long, that gives, I always call it, I learned this through mindful schools, it's a container. So every little bit of time with you're doing a math activity, that's a container. How do you introduce it? How do you prep for the
Yeah.
students to get involved? Do it, complete it, and end it. How
Yeah.
does that container look? And I always talk about priming the pump. So if they've really worked very hard after a strenuous written activity, I might
Hmm.
say, okay, let's just take a brain break.
Yeah.
Let's do some chill kinds of stuff. Music is wonderful for
Mhm.
that. And especially with older kids that really love certain music, the words mean something to them. And
Right.
simply doing a mindful activity, one we have called heart in my publication, you put your hand here and hand there, but you literally move your hand around your belly. And one of my kids loved the retro Beatles stuff, and he was 17, and he would just say, let it be. And that was his mantra.
Yeah.
So you can personalize it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Terry, you have mentioned so many like little resources here and there. Can you tell me like what are some of your favorite resources that a family could go and I will make some links to this in the show notes too of the things that you mentioned.
Okay, Mindful Schools is another one.
Okay.
As Daniel Siegel's books, The Whole Brain Child, The Yes Brain, and so on. He also has some mind up activities for
Okay.
teenagers that are fabulous. I love his work. And he has a lot of stuff on YouTube that you can watch for free. Dr. Barkley, I really like from the sense of truly understanding the spectrum of attention. So that idea, he's in the midst right now of diagnosing kids with cognitive disengagement syndrome, which typically we're called ADD without the H. And he
Mhm.
talks about this dream-like quality. They get spaced out, they're unfocused, and you're constantly bringing them back, and how mindfulness really can help them. So some of his work is really interesting to me. John Kabat-Zinn is wonderful. I'm big into executive function, and this is a real old book. I actually grabbed it today. It's called Yardsticks by a guy named Chip Wood, and it has classroom ages 4 to 14 of what is expected in social skills, in academic skills, in
Interesting. Mhm.
self-regulation and focusing. I am the author of the book Yoga and Me Come Be a Tree. And when I was doing my training for yoga, what really bothered me is that any yoga book that was published regarding integration of kids with physical disabilities was something so clinical that no kid would
Yeah.
ever want to read it.
Yeah.
It looked
Yeah.
like torture. And so I found this wonderful artist, and she and I self-published this together, and it shows a seated position for yoga and then the typical standing. And it's a
Yeah.
story about a walk through nature with two kids, one in a wheelchair and one without. It's not anywhere except in my house. So if you are interested, you can give them my email, and if they want it, they can have it. I give it away often when I'm teaching classes and make it part of
Yeah.
what I'm presenting, but it just was a labor of love for me
Yeah.
because I had so many kids on the autism spectrum say, I can do yoga in a chair because it makes me scared when my head is below when I do
Right.
down dog. And so having gravity made a huge difference for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's published. Then I did Mindful Music with Marianne Harmon. It's pretty much for the younger crowd, and it's talking about alerting activities in a mindful way and calming activities. I am not a singer, but I was able to write a lot of lyrics, and she sings it.
I
But
listened to it the other day when I was preparing for
did you?
this. I
Did you?
did.
That's my favorite. And so she and I knew each other from working for staff development for educators for years, and
Okay.
she has it on Spotify now. And then my publications are a suite of movement activities in a variety of areas. So the first one was attention and strength for younger kids that seem weaker. They can't hold pencils that might be very sensitive to sensory
Yeah.
processing. So it was a lot of ways of calming and alerting. And then the other one is calming and stress busting, which was a way of looking at how we cope with incoming feelings. Some people would rather go for a good run. Other
Hmm.
people want to be quiet and home. So it is a lot of tactile input. You learn how to give yourself a massage. You're not having to touch a
Smart.
child. You're learning how to breathe in kind of a fun and playful way. And then I did one for movement and functional developmental postures for nursery rhymes for preschool and kindergarten. And the final one's called the Body Challenge, which is integrating curriculum with movement. So the way I have teachers use it is if they want to do vocab, they might stand up and have kids move. They could have stretchy bands. They could just move their arms and be calling out how to spell, let's say, vocabulary words for whatever curriculum. And then they learn to sit and their body's primed to sit long and strong.
Yeah, to be long and strong. And where can they find all of those resources?
Theraproducts.com.
Okay. And I will make sure that is all linked in the show notes. Terry, thank you so much for coming and for explaining mindfulness to us, but also giving some tidbits and some snippets into being mindful today. I can say I was picturing myself riding a bike at one point and it was lovely. So
And
thank you for
teachers
my
can use it
afternoon.
once they start using it. You can use it for comprehension of a
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Close your eyes, see yourself on that hill. Imagine what it would have been like to see the soldiers coming at you if you're doing history,
Yeah.
whatever. Because I notice that once the teacher starts utilizing it themselves and understanding how wonderful it is, then they bring it into the practice of all the students that they use it for, and they try to weave it into curriculum. To me, that's the key.
That has always been one of my favorite questions with my own kids after we're reading a book, and I'll be like, explain to me what you saw during that time, whatever. And hearing each of their descriptions is a little different. Like, even imagine our most recent, we've been reading Wild Robot.
Mm.
And so we were talking about for them, like the section that we just finished, the robot had just gotten up on the beach. And I was like, describe what your beach would look like. And all three of my kids, it was all different. One was they had palm trees at their beach. One was like the beach that we actually go to typically in Delaware. And they were talking about all the umbrellas that were be up, but no people
Yeah,
there. It was just fascinating to hear all the, like, what they were seeing in their heads. So
yeah.
cool. So,
Thank you for having me. I totally
yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. And thanks for sharing. Have a great day.
Right back at you. Bye now.
Hey, this is Sarah Collins, just hopping on here to give you a sneak preview of the new book, A Chameleon Tale, a sensory story that is coming out here in May of 2025. Now, if you've heard episode 59 and 60, you heard the first half of the book, but we're going to keep going today, and be sure to listen to the end where you can hear some of the questions or discussion points to use with your students. Now, in this picture, you can see Mama and Sally hanging out after Sally has returned to her gold color. She says, the chameleons feel safe and calm. Mama reminds Seth and Sally of the beauty and freedom that comes with knowing what your body needs. What each chameleon needs may look different in a similar situation. Check out these birds, you guys. As they approach the communion cafe, Seth frowns. The new smells of the tree and the loud chatter of the toucans start to worry him. Again, he turns aqua. It's all too much for his senses. Mama and Sally are checking him out. Mama notices Seth's new color and remains calm and gold. She offers him a chewy bug. Seth, take this bug in your mouth and enjoy your chomps. Doesn't that feel satisfying? Remember how your body feels when you chew? Seth's color is turning gold, and Mama says, I notice your color is turning gold just in time to sit down to eat. Seth, you knew just what to do. Now, here they are at the community cafe, Sally climbing up to get to their dishes. And on the branch, the chameleon family starts to eat their buggy meal. Uh-oh, Sally is turning coral. Mama asks, Sally, what is your body telling you? You may need to move, but because that's not easy to do in the cafe, let's try some interesting tastes and textures. Sally recognizes her discomfort now that Mama had helped her become aware of it. There they are at the Chameleon Cafe eating. Mama passes Sally an extra sour bug, and Sally's color returns to gold. Sally's body feels happier, and in between bites, her face shows a smile. Mama says, I notice your color is gold again, Sally. You knew just what to do. So, a few things about this. Number one, you notice how they use tastes in different ways. For Seth, he needed the chomp or the chewy within his jaw to help him to calm down. This is proprioception, but through the jaw. Think of ways that you can do that with your own children at home. Is that sucking through a straw, chewing on gum? These are easy ways that we can have some tips or tricks to help to calm the nervous system. Now, Sally, on the other hand, she needed some more input because she couldn't get what she typically would do through that movement. So we had to use another sense, the sense of taste, and that sour bug helped her to regulate her body. Notice also how Mama, she talked about how the environment and what Sally needed weren't a match at that time. And that's quite frequent. There's even an entire theory of disability called the social theory of disability, where we look at how an environment can increase a person's inability to be able to participate in what they need and want to do. In this case, that was happening, but Mama knew how to help Sally to be able to engage in eating this meal out with her family. You guys, I hope that you continue to follow along to hear the rest of the book and to find out more about how you can download the free book guide. Now, also hope that you will pre-order so that this book, when it's coming out here in May of 2025, will be ready for you to share with your children. You can find out more about that at homeschoolot.com/a-chameleon-tale. And if you're like me and you don't know how to spell chameleon easily, just click here in the show notes. Get this book and really be able to dive into explaining sensory processing to your children. Thank you for being here.